Greetings and welcome to Voices from Albion, the Magnetic Minstrel podcast. My name is Richard McPherson and I'll be your host tonight. Make yourself a steaming bowl of cinnamon porridge, or perhaps sip on a tall glass of Glenlivet and sit back while I tell you the tales of the lost Albion Empire and the musical saga of Magnetic Minstrel. Episode 7, The Siege of Castle Dore and the Exile of Taliesin and Silverbrow. Chapter 1, The Giant's Dance. Part 1, The Architect's Dream. As the armies of Albion moved southward after their victory at Lochmandia, Aniran tried to visualize the building of Stonehenge. As he consulted the databases inside of his armor, he realized that what he would need to build would be much more complex than the circle of stones that stood in the modern age. In the end, he decided that it would not be one circle, but a group of circles within a circle. This would allow the power to be concentrated within the larger circle. The closer they grew to Old Sarum and the vast expanse of the Salisbury Plain, the more its creation took shape in his mind. Yet, as is often the way with great ideas, once he reached his final destination, he found the reality to be very much greater than he had ever expected. Part 2, The Four Henges. When Aniran finally began the initial planning of the massive stone complex, he soon realized that he had been presented with an unexpected opportunity. As the officers of Albion began to explore the wide plain, they made several discoveries. Lying due east of the anticipated centre of the circle, elements of the College of Bards uncovered what looked to be a crater of a fallen meteor. Inside the crater, they found what appeared to be a sunken geode of immense proportions nearly a mile across. It was filled with thousands of amethyst crystals. Aniran immediately seized on this as the Bard's Henge, and a stone circle would be erected to encompass it. Next came the discovery made by the Sisterhood of the Lake to the west. They found a small submerged grotto that was filled with the contents of an underground lake. This would be the Moon Henge and would be shaped by the Sisterhood with a circle of trees to encompass its circumference. Due north came the discovery of a forest at whose heart lay a single massive oak tree encompassed by several circles of fir and elm trees. This would be the Druid's Henge and would make the northernmost boundary of the great complex. Finally, at its heart, the stone circles that Aniran had envisioned would complete the creation, the Stonehenge. Part 2, Summons to the Heavens. When at last the night of their great performance came, Aniran secretly wondered if their plan would succeed to retrieve the captive princess from her imprisonment. Yet as the spectacle began to unfold, there was no denying the elegance and grandeur of what they had achieved. The massive discharge of power from the great circles of stone was woven and enhanced by the magics of the College of Bards, the Brotherhood of the Druids, and the Guardians of Magecraft within their positions inside their companion henges. The final touch came when the High Priestess and her cadre of dancers wove the magical display into a great tower of light that burst from the centre of the Giant's Dance and leapt up into the heavens. Over the spellbinding moments that followed, the entire assemblage waited in breathless wonder as a great wave of light spread across the night sky. It was only when there was the answering blow of a massive detonation that they knew that they had struck their final objective. With it came a returning wave of illumination, which finally struck the great tower of light like the sound of a fathomless tolling of a great bell. Inside could be seen a shimmering shape which fell upon the hailstone of the stone circle, and with a final clap of thunder and discharge of lightning, a shimmering naked shape of Princess Calestra lay shivering upon the cold stone. Chapter 3, Dreams of Albion. Part 1, The Reunion of Lovers. Calestra would not awaken for 3 days. During that time, Anirin watched over his sleeping beauty like a vigilant hawk. Even her father, Emperor Lyra, was impressed by his dedication and commitment. When she finally did awaken, Anirin found that his faith in what lay between them surpassed all of his expectations. Once she had fully awakened, she insisted on privacy between them so she could truly express the passion that had bonded them across time and space. She was both a loving, romantic heart and a wild, passionate lover, and Anirin found that their tryst together left him on the edge of blissful exhaustion. She was also a very avid listener and made Anirin recount all of the details of his journeys in Albion while she listened in silent wonder. Once a couple of weeks had passed and Calestra had acclimated to a return to the heart of Albion, she began to make plans for what she hoped would be their return to the Vale of Lyonesse and the retaking of Castle Dore. And in this, Anirin found that he was pleasantly surprised by the ardour and passions of his newfound lady love. Part 2, Sleeping in the Land of Dreams. After the rescue of Princess Calestra, the attentions of Albion now focused on the other part of its mission, the retaking of the Vale of Lyonesse and Castle Dore. The armies of Albion were now 30,000 warriors strong under the command of its 3 generals. Not content to stand on the sidelines, Calestra began training with Lady Elwyn and a host of other women as shield maidens, and practiced daily in the art of swordplay. The folk would not be denied either, as they began to arrive daily in the Imperial encampment until they were a force of more than 20,000, armed with little better than axes and pitchforks. Yet these were not the only things in the arsenal of Albion. While the magical officers of the Empire worked daily to improve their skills in spell weaving and mage casting, it was the inspiration of Lady Hergarth and Lord Hergist that Albion should possess a more subtle weapon against the Arch Druid. Greatly changed from their earliest contentious ways, they now worked tirelessly together to hone the College of Bards into a formidable force. This would mean employing an unusual and entirely unexpected weapon. They would use dreams in defense of Albion. Through the agency of oniromancy, or divination by dreams, to divine the secrets of the Arch Druid and the traps that lay in wait for them inside the Vale of Albion. The last night in the Imperial encampment proved to be fruitful beyond their imagining, as it revealed not only the dark host that lay in waiting inside of the Vale, but a hidden host of spies that had penetrated the Imperial encampment and were sending information to the Arch Druid. The very next morning, the forces of Albion broke camp and began to move unerringly towards the Vale of Lyonesse for their final encounter with the Arch Druid. Chapter 4, An Unexpected Encounter. Part 1, An Uninvited Guest. As the Imperial forces moved across the Cornish moors and took up station at the gateway to the Vale of Lyonesse, several unpredicted events took place. The first was that another spy was uncovered in the Imperial camp, albeit one that was entirely unwilling. It soon became apparent that the Arch Druid had sown a malevolent spirit inside of Calestra during her imprisonment in the Ring of Shadows. This was revealed by a most unanticipated agency in the form of Queen Danu of the Tuo de Danann. The possession of the princess was exercised in the most awe-inspiring manner. Upon the brow of the Vale of Lyonesse, Queen Danu again caused a great upheaval in the land, and a massive emerald monolith was thrust up into the sky at the entry of the Vale of Lyonesse. Within its summit was a single beacon that swept across the moorlands like an emerald beacon, earning it the name Tuair Glas an Donhan, or the beacon of the goddess. Under its greenish light, the spellcasters of Albion worked their fierce magics to exorcise the spectre of the Dorka Avalantari that inhabited the body of Calestra and sent it screaming into the night before their powerful incantations. Part 2. An Unforeseen Ally. On the eve of their assault upon the Vale of Lyonesse, the Imperial camp was host to an extraordinary visitation. As the generals gathered upon the brow of the Vale to prepare for the morning's assault, they realized that the Arch Druid had sent a mysterious dark host before Castle Dore. Standing in silent array were nearly a regiment of metallic warriors that reeked of dark magic and great black power. As they pondered this new development, the Emperor and his Imperial party received an unprecedented guest. A woman warrior clad in a dark hood and raiment presented to the Imperial Guard requesting an audience with the Emperor. Once she was brought before him, she declared that she was Captain Mary Magdalene Russell of the Knights of Revelation, and she had travelled backward in time through the agency of her time sphere to capture the very dark army that lay encamped on the very doorstep of Castle Dore. This came as quite a shock to Aniran to encounter another time traveller in the time of Albion. What was even more astounding was that she knew of an Aaron Harper and magnetic minstrel, and spoke to him at length of the fortunes that would soon await him on his musical explorations in the future once he returned. She was very careful not to reveal too much of his future, lest it compromise his plans. It soon became apparent that her focus was much more on the dark, sinister warriors who she named the Coldine, and she wished to capture and return to Atlantis in the past, where judgment awaited them for their foul deeds. Once she had revealed her tale, Emperor Lyra charged the officers of Albion to aid the Lady Magdalene in her task. Thus began a dark night's work that heralded the assault on the Vale of Lyonesse by the Armies of Albion and the return of Castle Dore. Chapter 5. Marching to Purgatory. Part 1. A Midnight Rendezvous. As the witching hour approached, the forces of Albion employed a hitherto unknown method of stealth. It had been Aniran's inspiration that they fashioned hot air balloons to float down the Vale of Lyonesse and take the dark army of the Coldine by surprise. As they waited for Lady Magdalene to get into position with their time sphere, the smart dark soldiers of the Coldine, Aniran and his force of magical officers glided with quiet serenity through the midnight breeze towards Castle Dore. It was the first time anyone had looked upon the town of Citadel since the Arch Druid had driven on the way. Its once magnificent edifice was now covered in all manner of filth from Vandrel's black creations. Cursing silently and vowing retribution, Aniran and his cohorts reached the moment of reckoning. Only they were to find that the Arch Druid had placed wards over his accursed army, and the Lady Magdalene would not be able to retrieve them to fulfill her errand of justice. At the last, he was left with no choice save confronting the Arch Druid with the magic of Albion. In a pitched magical battle, the forces of Albion triumphed over Vandrel's dark magic, and the wards of the Arch Druid were broken. As the Lady Magdalene swooped away and spirited the Coldine back into the past, the forces of Albion were now faced with a new and equally grim threat: the awakening of Vandrel's slumbering dragon horde. Part 2. In the dark watches of the morning. As the veil shadow of the dragon horde ascended into the blackness of the night sky, Aniran realized that they were completely vulnerable to the dragon attack from the vicarious vantage of their lumbering hot air balloons. Left with no other choice, Aniran ordered the magical officers of Albion to utter a magical summons to Queen Danu for her intervention, and their prayers were answered in the most spectacular fashion. A great tidal wave of emerald light erupted into the sky and swept hot air balloons on the crest of a massive green wave towards the end of the Vale of Lyonesse on a towering monolith of Terraglass on Daman, just ahead of the howling ferocity of the Arch Druid's dragon horde. They barely made it to the safety of the Armies of Albion before Queen Danu enacted her final trick of magical legerdemain. an emerald shield at the end of the Vale of Lyonesse, effectively sealing the Arch Druid and his dragon horde inside the Vale like an angry genie in a bottle. As the Emperor marshaled his forces at the entry to the Vale, the Arch Druid began to hurl his forces against the magical shield, only to no avail as they were incinerated within its greenish glow. As the sun began to dawn on the Vale of Lyonesse, the armies of Albion stood ready to enter the valley. As the shield slowly dropped, the combined might of Albion swept down into the Vale of Lyonesse. As they entered the valley, the Arch Druid set fire to the forest of Lyonesse, and it looked as though they were entering the very precincts of hell. Through the inferno of smoke and fire, the armies of Albion began their fearsome march to war. This has been Voices from Albion, a Magnetic Minstrel podcast. I hope that you have enjoyed the show and will tune in next time for the next episode. If you want to know more about the Lost Albion Empire, please go to starofalbion.co.uk, and if you are curious about the band Magnetic Minstrel, please go to magneticminstrel.co.uk. So, until next time, stay safe in this uncertain world, my fine lads and lasses, and fare thee well. Voices from Albion, the Magnetic Minstrel podcast, is a production of Keramora Audio. Copyright Richard McPherson, 2020. All rights reserved.